Welcome back to the official Winning Time podcast from HBO. I'm Rodney Barnes, executive producer on the show. Today we've got a very special pre-finale bonus episode with the real-life Jeanie Buss, the owner and president of the Los Angeles Lakers. When you first heard that HBO was going to make this show based on Jeff Pearlman's book Showtime, what were your first thoughts?
There's a lot of stories, and, could anybody really do it justice? Because it was such an important time in the NBA, in the city of Los Angeles, professional sports, and all the characters. And, Jeff Pearlman did a nice job on the book, but there's still a lot of material in there.
So what'd you think of the show once you saw it?
I have a different view than anybody else because since I was there growing up in the middle of it all, you can look back now and realize all the seeds that were sown and planted as time went on. To look back at it and the things that were so well done in the show, especially the enthusiasm that Jeanie Buss had for the Lakers, for building something special, his being captivated by Magic Johnson and the relationship that they built. I think that's really important for people involved in the sports business and the marketing business. You'd never really seen, an owner and a top player bond the way that they did, and that the partnership that they created and the success that they had from it, I think is a learning lesson for people in our business. And I think it was really, really well captured by the writers and by the actors who were portraying Magic and Dr. Buss and Kareem and the whole cast is really spectacular.
Thank you. I think it really was a unique time. Up until that point, it seemed like owners really didn't fraternize that much with players or didn't have the intimacy with players at that time. And I think Dr. Buss sort of ushered in a new era of relationships with players that I think actually helped empower the player in a different type of way.
My dad grew up, in a time that was really difficult.
Yes.
And his mother remarried when he was young, and his stepfather would not adopt him. And it was something that my dad had to carry his whole life, was, growing up in a family where he had a different last name. And what I think was important to him was for people to always feel included. And that, so when he made the move to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles embraced him, and he made his fortune in real estate development in Southern California in the 60s and the 70s. And he had an opportunity to, get involved in sports, which was really his passion. And when he built the Lakers, he wanted everybody to feel included. Everybody could be a Laker fan. And, we hear the stories about the Forum Club and the exclusiveness of it, but it was really about, he wanted everybody to feel a part of what he was building. And no truer reflection of that than when he, reaches out to Magic and says, I'm looking for a partner in this. I want somebody that's as passionate as I am, who wants to win, who wants to do something unique and has never been done. And there's a scene in the show where they literally are at a drive-in hamburger
Yeah.
stand. And my dad knew every one, and he had them ranked. And, when we would go somewhere, it would be like, and Jeanie, when we go to, the sports arena, on the way is Gooey Louie's. We're going to go to Gooey Louie's before the game tonight. And, having that scene play out in the parking lot with my dad's Rolls Royce and the two of them talking about, what they, the bond that they had and what they wanted to build. And they just found a kindred spirit in each other. They were each other's soulmates. And, there was an age difference, a background difference. But it all melted away. And, my dad, really wanted success and to give to the city of Los Angeles a team that they could be proud of. He felt that the media had such a bias towards East Coast teams that, all you ever heard about were the Knicks or the Celtics or the 76ers. And he wanted Los Angeles to have a team that they could be proud of. And, he made that his mission. And, that passion was real. And I think it was very well reflected in the series.
Thank you. It feels sometimes like Hollywood has a boundary up between its fans, but the Lakers feel like family in a way. It feels almost like if you're a Laker fan, our own Jim Hecht, executive producer on the show, is the biggest Laker fan. He deserves a statue outside someplace. And there's this love. I come from the East Coast and was a Bullets fan. That's all we had. And there didn't seem to be, in all of the things that we studied, that sense of family, that sense of harmony, that even players who leave are still connected to the organization in a very unique way, whether it's the past, whether it's the present. Everyone still feels like they're a Laker if you ever were a Laker.
That, again, going back to how my dad grew up and feeling left out, and he never wanted anybody to feel left out. And, there's a funny story about, it wasn't funny to Vlade Divac, but one of our popular players in the day, who ended up, Jerry West, had to trade him in order to get the pick that became Kobe Bryant. And, Vlade didn't want to go. He didn't want to leave Los Angeles. And my dad convinced him and said, literally, you have to do this for the team. You have to agree to go. And he did. And then, of course, Vlade came back and finished out his playing career as a Laker. And, and then, is always there for the big moments as we go forward. So there was a lot of intent about making this a family and continuing in that even to today. And I think in the series, especially for people who weren't born or were too young to remember the Magic Johnson, Larry Bird era, and who are NBA fans today. This is a history lesson, not only in the Lakers, but in what the NBA was going through and this transformation, and really the beginning of sports marketing. And, the series, talks a lot about sponsorships and how important, the corporate dollars were to the players, the shoe companies, the teams, the league. So, it's a lesson in basketball. It's a lesson in marketing, business, family. I think people will find it very entertaining. I mean, there's some things that might have been exaggerated or a little bit, for dramatic sake, purposes. Unfortunately, my grandmother had already passed
Yes.
before my dad bought the team. And, and for me, I enjoyed watching. She would have gotten such a kick out of it if she, if she was alive. So I excused the inaccuracy because it's like the kind of stuff that you dream about, that I wish Grandma
Sally
was
Field
here.
was pretty good.
And to have
as
Sally
well.
Field as Jeanie Buss was a pretty great casting.
So what's it like seeing someone play you on screen?
I mean, it's a humbling, very humbling. And, I get a kick out of people who say, well, I like, she's not even blonde. And I'm like, well, neither am I. He's like, you have to compare her to, Jeanie in the 80s as opposed to Jeanie today. But I think she did a terrific job. I think that, people who are interested in, kind of understanding how I got to be where I am today, because being the, first woman in the NBA to win a championship, maybe there's some people who had never heard my name before. Well, if you want to understand what my background and how I evolved into where I am today, you get my early history and what my dad saw in me that, made him feel confident that he could put the team in my control, and that, there would be no promises, because even Dr. Buss made mistakes along the way. But he knew what I would bring to the job, and what what he instilled in me, and that's why I'm here today.
So Hadley Robinson, who plays you, had a question. She asked, now that you're an owner, what question would you like to ask your father if you could?
There's so many. And, my dad and I would always war game everything. And we would have conversations. Well, if this happens, then, then I would expect you to do this. And I think that, he prepared me, very, really to kind of roll with things. He said, Jeanie, you won't run the team exactly the same way I did. I expect you to continue to evolve the team as, every business does, new technologies. But he was, still around when we signed our, 25-year deal television agreement. And I guess, with the change in the environment today with streaming versus broadcast, cable, satellite, just another distribution system, I would love to hear what his take would be today. But, he always knew and prepared me that as technology changed, like things you'd have to adapt new things. Like, you would never think, we now are ticketless, for example. Like, we don't send tickets to our fans. Right. Everything is on their personal device. So now we actually print tickets for special games, because people want to have a keepsake to put in a scrapbook or pin on their wall or whatever. And so now we create tickets not to get into an event, but for people to keep as a memory. So, things just continue to evolve.
Do you think he foresaw that the game would become the global game that it's become?
He absolutely knew that this game, he he was passionate about the game and how it was played. And Showtime basketball, that fast pace, acrobatic kind of play was his favorite style. When Phil Jackson came in with the triangle, that kind of frustrated him because it didn't slow down the game, but I guess it required more thought and more precision, right? Yeah. So, for him, it wasn't his favorite style, but certainly as they've adjusted the rules in the NBA to allow more shooting and more, of these, fast guards and
defenses changed,
right?
Yeah,
I think he saw that it was a game that translated very well, all over the world. And, he was very close to Commissioner David Stern. And under David Stern was really when, the investment in growing the game overseas. And, back, even in, when Vlade was drafted, maybe 88 or 89, they're like drafting a foreign player. It was like, are you crazy? Like, he may get drafted into the army, he may not be able to come. Like, we don't even know what they do in other countries. And now to think that we, I think it's
a normal
25
thing now to
right,
draft
it's like
players from all over.
All over. You have to have global scouts. You know, I think 25 to 30% of the players are international. Wow. So it really has, captured the imagination around the world.
What would you say was a key scene or moment within your career here with the Lakers that we left out of the show?
I wish I, I mean, what I can't believe is how much you did capture, people don't understand, how tricky it was for my dad to get the team to begin with, and how it was, the escrow of, Jack Kent Cooke, owned the Washington football team in the NFL, and then he owned the Lakers and the Kings and the Forum, and he was in the process of getting a divorce, and he kind of vacated LA to establish residency in Reno, Nevada, so that he could get a more favorable judgment against him in the divorce, because it was different than in California law. So my dad saw that as an opportunity to start, working the system, so to speak, to convince Cook that he needed to sell him the teams. Right. And, it was like a 2-year process of my dad flying back and forth to Nevada. But, my dad wasn't going to be denied. And then he thought he'd have a deal, then Cook would move, the goalposts a little bit more and a little bit more. And my dad, it was so frustrating. But at one point, Jack and Cook said, well, I'd really like to own the Chrysler building in New York. So my dad had to figure out how to trade property he had here in New York, so that he could get Cook the Chrysler building, and it was like just craziness, and the idea that it was touched on in the series. I hope then people will do a deep dive and read more about it, because it really was spectacular what was pulled off. And then of course my dad wanted Jerry Tarkanian as the original coach of the Lakers. That was his first choice, and again pursued him, and he was a coach at UNLV, University of Nevada at Las Vegas. And he met with his agent, and then a few hours later the agent was found in the trunk of his car, murdered, and he had a similar car to my dad's. So all of a sudden, he's calling me and saying, are you at home? I mean, well, where are you, Jeanie? I got to find you. You got to stay home. The FBI has, they don't know if the hit was supposed to be on me, and I'm like, wait a minute, what is happening?
What are you talking about?
This dad,
It's basketball.
Like you bought a team and now you're telling me the FBI is like, it was like our lives changed so much in a blink of an eye, and it all came so fast. And, but my dad, he was having the time of his life. He loved all of the intrigue and the challenges, and John C. Reilly is absolutely breathtaking as my dad. And whether he could feel that, he could channel Jeanie Buss, the writers gave him great material, the performance and how he wasn't talked about for an award or several awards. I hope that this season, just from what I've seen so far, he should, definitely be considered. He's absolutely fabulous, and I got a chance to meet him at a Laker game. And I, literally crossed paths with him in the chairman's room at the arena. And I thought for a second, I really should introduce myself to him because I knew he was playing my dad. And, I said, it's by chance I'm here. I've got to take this moment. So I introduced myself to him, and the look on his face, he goes, "Are you throwing me out?" And I go, "Why would I throw you out?" I said, I really want you to hear this story. I have to tell you this story that, one of the things that my dad and I did, one of our passions was to go to the movies. And, my dad being very busy, when we did get a day to go to the movies, he'd want to see 2 or 3 or 4 in one day.
Right.
And, so we had seen the movie Chicago, and John C. Reilly, was fantastic in that film. And after we watched the film, my dad said to me, he goes, I think he's going to win an award. He was really good. And, when somebody that can be so funny can play such a tragic character, I said, I think he'd be really honored that you were playing him.
He was. He told us about it shortly thereafter, and he was incredibly honored by it. So, thank you. Did you know you wanted to be an owner?
I think just growing up in it, it's like second nature. And, when my dad bought me the LA Strings, put me in charge of it, and I remember going to him and saying, "Hey, Dad, I'm trying to build the roster. Can I get your advice?" And he was like, "No, I want you to do this yourself.
Wow.
I want you to know what it's like to get the credit if you succeed, but also the blame if you don't." So then I have somebody that can understand what I'm going through.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was like he felt kind of isolated, and he wanted us to have that shared experience. So, he was thrilled when we won the championship in 1981 with Martina Navratilova as our star player.
Wow. In the show, the Jeanie Buss character doesn't see Jeanie as his heir apparent. How accurate was that?
Over the years, he would try to teach me how to play poker. And I am not a gambler. I am terrible at cards. I don't like to gamble. It's just not in my nature.
Right.
And so he'd force me to give me lessons. No, you gotta try. I know you could be good. And finally, after a few years and several tears of mine later, he goes, "You understand why I'm trying to teach you this, right?" And I was like, "No, I don't get it. I don't like it." And he goes, "People think that, poker is, about going all in and it's like," he goes, it's not. Poker's a game of stamina and patience. And you have to be very patient, and you have to wait for the cards. And he said, and I know you can do that. That's who you are.
Right.
He said, but when you get the cards, you have to be able to go from 0 to 100 like that, without a doubt. And he goes, that's the part I'm not exactly sure you have. And so, that always stuck with me. And I tend to overthink things, and I'm very cautious and very much, about, really examining everything to a detail. And so when we had the opportunity to trade for Anthony Davis in 2018 or 2019, I forget what's off season that was now. It was one of those things that we had acquired all this young talent like Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball and Josh Hart. And, I was getting attached to them. The fans were getting attached to the baby Lakers was what they called them.
Yes.
And, so now here we are giving them up to get Anthony Davis, who I knew my dad. I remember Anthony Davis in college, and my dad saying, that's a player we'll never get because, we'll never have a draft pick high enough to get a player like that. It's so frustrating. So here was a player that, we could get, but, and it was like a gamble, like now you got to push it all in. And, that deal led us to a championship.
That it did.
And I think he would have been really proud that I didn't overthink or I didn't, shy away from the moment when, everybody's going to second guess. Did you make the right decision? Was that the right choice? And, you're alone in the one, signing off on the deal.
It's beautiful to have that kind of intimacy and honesty in a relationship with a parent, who's grooming you for the future. So Muhammad Ali had Frazier, Borg had McEnroe, and the Lakers have the Celtics. How important would you say the Celtics are to the story of the Los Angeles Lakers?
You don't know who you are until someone pushes you to be the best you can be. And the scenes in the series where Red Auerbach is just torturing my dad, and people were like, "Oh, did Red really say that?" And I'm like, the tapes were playing in my dad's head, whether he said it or not.
Yeah. That's
how it felt.
Right.
Like this guy's breathing down my neck, blowing his cigar smoke in my face. And, so it's, again, like it's so well captured, and that, for people who don't really understand that, just the angst that losing losing was hard enough, but losing to the Celtics just felt like it was that much more weight on top of your shoulders that you were never going to get out from underneath. And it's just such a ride to go through all of that. And again, for people who are new to the NBA or don't really know the history, there's things that I could look at after being in this business now for over 40 years and having a relationship with Phil Jackson, former Lakers coach, for over 15 years, that now I look back at those scenes, you know, in the locker room with the players, with who's going to be the captain, you know, is you know, whose voice in the locker room is, you know, going to be the leader, you know, how does the coach interact with the front office?
Yeah.
How does the front office interact with the ownership? That it's so nuanced and so well captured because it's not like the relationships aren't, you know, as much as Paul Westhead's character kept trying to say, like, there has to be a protocol and an order.
Yes.
There is no order. It's personalities, chemistry, like outside events, internal events, like everything makes, you know, it is going to change how people interact in real time. Media, like there's so many great scenes of how the media can you know, throw a dagger
Yes.
to, you know,
Create controversy, disrupt the family. Yes.
and that, you know, I mean, it's even, you know, people say, well, you know, it's so bad today. It was bad then because there was only like 2 newspapers and everybody read them. So it's like.
Now you've got social media. So yeah.
So it's like, I think it's a cautionary tale that everybody that's interested in this business, you know, really needs to examine and see what it does in you know, planting ideas and narratives that you know, are fair or unfair.
It seems like your father's leadership style was so vastly different from what preceded him that when you see the coaching changes, the stuff that we went through with Jerry West and who's going to be the coach and we're going to co-coach and is it going to be Pat Riley and, you know, all of the different machinations of who's going to be the leader had a lot to do with, again, this family idea. This family idea of who's going to best lead and captain the ship. Do you think that still exists within the organization in that same way, or do you think it's more uniform because of the evolution of it all?
I mean, I think it exists in sports today.
Okay.
And, you know, there was a, you know, an interview that my dad did in 1980 that's on YouTube, and I've posted it before just because I think it was really important. What he was describing was like what the role of the owner is, what the role of the GM is, what the role of the coach is, and, you know, how he saw things.
Right.
And, you know, that's really, it seems so simple, but there's something about sports that it gets, you know, turned around because of, you know, egos.
Yes.
And people feeling that they contribute more to winning than anybody else.
Right.
And, you know, I you know, when there was like an era in the NBA of, you know, where teams were tanking and like how brilliant that strategy was. And it's like, really, like, you really think the front office is deciding whether a team's going to win or not? Like, it really, it's so disrespectful to the coach and to
Right.
the players who are actually playing the games. Like, you really think you're going to sit in behind your desk and you're going to decide, okay, we're going to win this many games and then we're going to get this draft pick. And, you know, you know, Dr. Buss's, you know, formula, even though he veered off of it, as we see in the series, you know, dealing with the aftermath of signing Magic Johnson to a 25-year, $1 million a
contract.
year
Yeah.
lifetime contract, and the repercussions that he didn't anticipate from that, you know, he that was a lesson he learned, and made him a better owner as time went on. And but he is in the Guinness Book of World's Records as the winningest owner in sports in terms of winning percentage of any sport owner. So
Wow.
he knew what he was doing,
That he
even
did.
though sometimes he made mistakes.
We all do. When you see Quincy Isaiah, who plays Magic, and Solomon Hughes, who plays Kareem, what do you feel when you see those performances? Does it bring any sentiment along the way?
Absolutely. There's one scene where Quincy winks at the camera, and I'm like, I've seen that wink 100 times. I know that wink. He's got it down, and that he captures that essence of Magic just playing with joy, and it was he that's a hard part to cast, and he does a terrific job. And then of course Solomon, what a challenging role to
Yeah.
take on Kareem. There's
Big
so
time.
many layers of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and who he is
Mm-hmm.
and what he's meant to society. And and to capture him in this part of his life, and I think he does a terrific job as well.
So we talk a lot about clothes and the look of the times and all of that. And Emma, our costume designer, tracked down Dr. Buss's tailor, his actual tailor. So you had a unique perspective when you saw the clothes for the first time. And how did that make you feel to see your dad again in those clothes?
My dad had a very distinct way of dressing, and he was known for wearing blue jeans, and that was like his rebellion against having to wear a tie and being a self-made man, like the shirts unbuttoned down to here. But my jaw dropped because the detail in his wardrobe, I'm like, that's exactly the clothes he was wearing, to the patterns of the shirt and the houndstooth jacket and the belt with the buckle. And I was like, I was just so blown away. And then someone shared with me that they actually tracked down my dad's former tailor, who had since passed away, but his son took over the business, and he still had the patterns of the Dr. Buss cut, and like that just, it warms my heart so much that there was so much care given in portraying this man that was complicated and interesting. And and now people would think, oh well, blue jeans are so easy, everybody wears blue jeans. But my dad, it was like he wanted to look sharp and look good, but still with his style. And he was very unique, and just to see that captured, I really, really appreciate.
So we recreated Pick Fair. How do you think we did?
I was absolutely like dumbfounded that the detail of Pick Fair with the Western bar and the staircase. And there's one conversation where my character is talking to her dad on the stairs. And I can't tell you how many conversations we had in exactly that position, because, that was, that's, we loved that staircase.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the centerpiece of the house. And, to see that resurrected, because, when the house was sold in, the late 80s, it was, bought and torn down. And, it was really a place that old Hollywood had really embraced. And so, in the storyline of our lives, moving into Pickfair, my dad was like on the sports pages in the LA Times every day. But when we moved into Pickfair, all of a sudden we were like Hollywood.
Wow.
And we were, because Pickfair was like Mary Pickford and
Yes.
Douglas Fairbanks. It was their mansion. They hosted all the dignitaries that came through Los Angeles. It was called the White House of the West.
Wow.
And now we take over. My dad, we spent years putting the house back together, and we would host charity events there and raise, $50,000, $100,000 a night, just, and I would give guided tours, and I knew the history of the house, and so to see Pickfair again was really just amazing. And then there's a detail that I don't even know. Well, myself and my brother Johnny, we noticed it right away. But there was a movie my dad produced, back in the early 70s when he, had some money and decided, hey, why not invest in a film? And it was called Black Eye. And there's the movie poster of the film behind the bar, along with all the USC football memorabilia. It was like an Easter egg hunt, just looking at all the stuff in his office at the Forum. Just all the little things that, and even the way he smoked a cigarette. I don't know if he saw footage of my dad smoking a cigarette, but he did. I mean, he's what a professional, to bring those nuances to his performance. I mean, and anybody who loved my dad would love to see this.
I wonder if later in his career, your father realized how important he was to the idea of race and women being involved in sport in the way that they became. Because you had this George Steinbrenner, and you had different, owners who were successful, but I don't know if they had the same impact as your father did. And do you think it was like a conscious idea that at some point he knew or talked about those types of things?
He was very socially conscious because, he felt, that he'd been excluded for so long, that he wanted to make sure that everybody had access and opportunity. He felt that education was the great equalizer, and gave, really supported so many different charities that gave opportunities to people. And that was something he was passionate about.
Knowing where we're going to in the 84 championships and knowing the outcome, where would you like to see us go in regards to the future?
I mean, you have to let us redeem ourselves and finally beat the Celtics,
yes,
in '85. And I think even a heartbreaking moment, when Magic had to retire from
yes,
HIV, that, I still have to explain to people that that was only 12 years into his career. He had a lot more basketball to play. And, I think that's a moment that you talk about a person in the right place and to be a leader and to step up. We were all a wreck that day of the press conference.
I remember the press conference, yeah.
And Magic was the one holding us up.
Wow.
What a difference he made in bringing awareness to a disease, and he never flinched.
And a post-athletic career, the idea of what an athlete can be in the future too, as far as business is concerned and his relevance socially and all of that. Not knowing what the future holds, how do you think we did in portraying these 2 seasons?
It's not enough. There's
agree.
more.
I
There's
agree.
more
I
stories
agree.
to tell, and like the evolution of Pat Riley.
Yep.
And and that is, it was very well written in terms of, I had the experience, and it's reflected in the show, where one day I'm walking down the hallway at the Forum and I'm like, "Hey, Riles," and he literally stops me and "Jeanie, I'm coach now. You have to call me coach." And it was like, okay, whatever. And that he really, that was where he wanted to be, and he was gonna stand his ground. And what a a time and a place for a person to be where they were meant to be.
Mm-hmm. So many transformative figures, characters, stories to be told. You actually left your honeymoon to come here and talk to us today. And I wanted to thank you first, but can you talk about the person you married?
He's a great actor.
Your husband, Jay Moore, is actually in our show.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about full circle and family. Yes. He's got a small part. Maybe he's going to get typecast as a sports agent, but he plays a sports agent. So, don't blink, or otherwise you'll miss his scene. But I mean, he's a terrific actor, and I'm very happy.
One last thing. Wanted to thank you for all the contributions. We wouldn't have a show if it weren't for everything that your family, the Laker organization, everything that you guys have accomplished is why we're here today. So I just wanted to thank you on behalf of all of us.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And it's like, let's all thank Dr. Buss.
Yes, very much so.
It's his vision.